Hi, welcome to episode 2 of Project Grēf with the one and only. We're turning the tables. And I've got my wife here,
Hello.
who unfortunately is very experienced in this journey, I guess we could call it. So hi, babe.
Hi.
How are you?
At peace today. I feel very relaxed right now.
I love that.
Yeah.
I was
I'm
going to
on my
ask you.
period, so I'm a little uncomfortable, but other than that, I'm good.
I was going to ask you if there's anything you wanted to clear to get a little bit more present. I know you just drove in from home, but
No. I think I'm good. I was listening to Mumford & Sons on the way here, so I am good. I was thinking about how I have tickets to see them 4 times this year. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
One might be able to call me a fan.
And I feel like going to Mumford & Sons is it's part of your therapy, part of your healing.
Oh, yeah. That band is I feel like that band, they don't even know it. If you're watching this, Marcus, you've healed many, many seasons of me. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Okay, so Mumford & Sons is like therapy for you. It's like your happy place.
Yeah. Who needs to go sit and do talk therapy when you can scream Little Lion Man at the top of your heart and lungs with, 30,000 of your closest friends?
So I think that's a good segue into healing and your journey that you've been on. I know if anyone has listened to your podcast, they have definitely heard you speak about it. But if you can share a little bit briefly about your story and your most impactful experience with grief.
That is a long...
I know.
That is an open-ended question.
We can...
My story.
No, we can modify it. Your story with
losing
your most
my dad.
Yeah, your most impactful grief moment.
Okay. Yeah. Well, my dad died 4.5 years ago. And my dad was the best. Just a real larger than life character. He was the kind of guy who, when he would meet new friends of mine, they would immediately be they called his daughter. Breezy was one of them.
I was absolutely
Little did he know, Dan, she is your daughter now.
He foreshadowed that.
But that was just who he was. He was a triple Gemini, sun, moon, rising. So, I think my dad was a complicated man, but he was a deeply loving man. He cared about people a lot and just really, for some reason, chose a really shitty hand with his health and his soul. When it picked its contract for this life that he got to live, he chose a really tough life. So he was a type 1 diabetic since he was 7. And that back then was not widely studied or understood. And so the answer back then was, oh, your blood sugar's low. Have a Snickers. And so in addition to becoming insulin immune, as most diabetics who have child onset do, you also become very addicted to sugar and your body becomes inflamed. And then there's weight issues and then there's heart issues, and heart disease already ran in his family. So, his dad died of a heart attack. So my dad also had heart complications, and I think it was just one health thing after another. And he passed at 64. And my dad was my best friend. And I think really one of the only people probably ever in my life who's really understood me, on a really deep soul level, and not because he tried to, but because he just knew me. And so I think when he died, it was, as it is for most people, it was really apparent that, I don't know, that depth of that kind of connection was not there anymore. And my mom kind of sucks.
Okay.
I love my mom. I really love my mom. She's done a lot of really made a lot of shitty decisions when it comes to parenting me. And I think I was always able to kind of like slide it under the rug because I had this like larger than life, super supportive, loving, charismatic, proud, enthusiastically proud father.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he died, it was like very apparent that, oh, all that's left is the one that like really has never known how to love me. And that's actually like, that's the truth. Like my mom just like doesn't know how to love me. Like it's very,
For who you are.
yeah, for who I am, like authentically who I am. And I think my dad always he never expected me to be anything but who I was. So it was always just like a real difference. I lived with my dad since I was 13. So when I was 13, I moved in with my dad full time. And so, yeah, we were just really close. And he died in January of 2021. And, I work as a healer and I work as a coach for a living, and I help people through their grief for a living. So I think it was really easy for me when he died to be like, I have all these tools. I'm going to get through this.
Mm-hmm.
And I did for like a year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about at the year mark that everything kind of came crashing down. And I realized I actually hadn't processed any of it. So I burnt down a lot of things, burnt down a lot of relationships, burnt down a lot of, I burnt down a business.
Well, I think it brings up one of the like most common myths about grief, which I think has been talked about a lot, but it's the most real myth, is that time heals all, right? It's
No,
like
time doesn't make grief. Like that's like the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's such a joke, but it
does not get easier with time. If you've lost somebody and you're moving through grief, like that's why I love what you say about this project, because it's moving with it. Like it doesn't go, like actually time doesn't get rid of grief at all. Grief gets worse with time.
Well, no, I think it opens up more layers of it with time. And so it's like
grief evolves as we do.
Yes.
But it gets worse. Like grief gets harder, I think, because, the biggest thing I wrestle with all the time is I can't believe I lived 33 years with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't believe like I'm going to live longer on this planet without him than I got with him.
Mm-hmm.
And every year that passes, it's like, how have you already been gone 4.5 years? But also like, I haven't seen you in 4.5 years. Like, how has it only been that long? And how has it already been that long?
Yeah.
That's so fucked up.
I want to come back to your dad, but you brought up an interesting, I don't know what I would call it, like a juxtaposition. So you brought up your mom briefly. But when I asked you about the most impactful grief you've lost, is definitely the loss of your dad. But losing your mom from your daily life while she's still alive.
Oh, grieving somebody that's still alive is sometimes even more hard. Like I don't know if it's harder. It's definitely more complicated. And it's more apparent.
I was going to say, yeah, how are those two experiences? Mm-hmm. How have those been different? Like I know a lot of the lessons you've learned from your dad, and we'll dive into those in a minute. But how has it been physically losing your dad from Earthside grief versus grieving your mom, who you're not speaking to right now and is still very much alive?
Well, it's the difference between closure and no closure. There's no closure. Mm-hmm. When Dad died, it's like one of my really good friends, our really good friends, Vili, right. She said something to me after my dad died. She goes, think of it like you guys were both in a temple, and like you were learning lessons from him as if he was Buddha. Mm-hmm. And then you learned everything you were meant to learn from him in this life, and then you actually left the temple. Oof. And I was like, yeah. Okay, that actually helped me a lot, because it's so easy when you lose somebody like to death to go like, why would they leave? Like, especially a parent.
Mhm.
You know, like grandparents, it's like one of those things, like it's not any easier, and it's like they were your grandparents. Like we grow up with this belief, this understanding that our grandparents are going to die, so
Or that they're gonna die first.
like
Yeah,
you're prepped for it.
Yes.
You're prepped for it emotionally, and it's like when it's your parent, there isn't any of that, and so there's like this. It's really easy to kind of get into that like anger mode where you're like, why would you leave? Like, I can't believe that you gave up. I can't believe that you did that. But, you know, it's if it's easier, I think now it brings me more peace to go, oh yeah, like my dad had a soul contract. I have to believe that he came here and fulfilled it. And I do believe, although it's really hard to say that out loud, I do believe that I did learn everything I was meant to learn from him while he was alive. I don't know if that's true with my mom. Maybe it is. Maybe what I actually was meant to learn from my mom is how to not give so much of myself away just to get people to love me. Maybe that is what I was meant to learn. I don't know. And it's hard because there is no closure.
Yeah.
It's just this like weird energy where like she watches my stories on Instagram, and like I hear about her through my brothers. She'll call my son's dad to talk to Owen. Like, it's just weird. And it's like there's no closure, and it's just a really weird grief that I sometimes I think that death I sometimes think death is actually the best kind of grief to have because there's closure. And you may be listening to this and be like, you're wrong. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean,
but I really believe that. Like, I think having somebody die is in the long run a lot easier to reconcile with than having them still be alive but not have a connection to them. That's hard.
It's almost more like fixed.
Yeah, it's fixed. It's finite.
Yeah, it's finite.
There's an ending.
Yeah.
We like, as humans, our brains like beginnings, and our brain likes endings. We don't like open-ended. And so when something's open-ended, there's always that ego trauma response of like, I need to fix this.
Going back to the loss of your dad. So you brought up a little bit ago, part of this project, I want to focus on the moving with grief, as opposed to moving through, because it's not something that we just like, oh, we finished, we're done, right? We're moving with it. So
I think that's so weird that people treat grief like this noun, like it's like a noun.
Yeah.
Okay,
or they treat
here's
it with
my
like,
grief. Let me put it up here on this shelf.
And the other weird
there
thing,
it is.
But
It's
the
like,
other weird thing is like on that shelf sits like the emotions we have, right?
Yeah.
It shows up as anger, sadness.
the seven. What is it? The seven stages of grief. Who wrote that? I would like to have a conversation with that person because I feel they are very wrong.
Because there are. So let's touch on that. How has grief shown up for you? Like as you're moving with grief in your life, how has it shown up for you?
Well, the 7 stages that they talk about every day, there's one of those.
Yeah. But how else in other ways? Because like for me personally, my grief will show up in starting this business or starting this project, right? Project Grēf, something I've been sitting on since 2022. Talk to you in like
longer than that.
It's been something that's been like marinating. I'm sitting on. I get like, what is it? Analysis paralysis, where I'm like, my overwhelm and anxiety, I will sometimes dig into it. You'll help me sometimes dig into it. And I'm like, wow, the amount of paralysis in decision making,
failure to launch
problems I have, I can, trickle back and realize that it all stems from unhealed grief and trauma and me not being able to like move that through so that I'm more clear and focused on my goals and So how has grief shown up for you in like the 7 stages of grief ways?
Well, I'll give some of the like positives, the more cliche ones first. I think since my dad died, my dad really wanted to retire on Hawaii. He was gonna like start a t-shirt business
Oh, yeah, the t-shirt
in
business.
Hawaii, and like he was serious. And he talked about retirement a lot growing up. I think most of our dads of that generation did. Like, that 65, got to make it to 65 so I can retire.
It was another thing that they told us was like an endpoint,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
finish
Like,
line.
you just got to finish it. And
get
my
the
dad
finish
died
line.
at 64. So the man never got retirement. And I watched him my whole life, did everything for us.
Mhm.
You know, anything I needed, I had. And he worked his ass off to make sure that that happened. Didn't ever really buy himself anything, minus was like his car and
I
like
was just gonna say his
really
car.
really great like Tommy Bahama shirts. But like the man could have bought anything. Like the man was wealthy and just never did anything with it. And I see how his legacy is living on now, and it's supporting my stepmom. You know, she's able to not work and live like a retirement life with how hard he worked. So like, it's not like it was for nothing, but it's like I watched him do that for so long that I don't let that happen. Like, I think if there was any belief that I had to ever like work for someone else, that totally went away through grief. Like, after my dad died, like, I will never work for someone else because I saw my dad do it for so long and die before retirement. Like, I'll never wait till retirement to do the things I want to do. And that, that's like I'm grateful to my dad for that. So that was like a huge lesson he taught me, unplanned lesson he taught me. I think the hardest part about moving with it, though, is there's been a lot of really incredible things that have happened since he died. We got married. I bought a house. I had like a first like $1 million year in business. We moved to Texas. Owen got to start a new school. His dad and I are like really close now. Things that like I would have really loved for him to see. And like, honestly, things that I don't know if that would have happened had he been alive, because there were a lot of, my dad, there was a net always when my dad was alive. Like, he was always there to catch me. And I'm so grateful for that. Growing up, I'm going to kind of go left for a while and then I'm going to come back. Growing up, I didn't grow up like in scarcity. I didn't grow up in poverty. My dad was very wealthy. We really could afford whatever we needed. And that comes with its own trauma, right? Because you never want for anything. And there's always this belief that like my dad will take care of me. And my dad always used to say, because he was sick, like if he would end up in the hospital or like have like a diabetic reaction or end up in the hospital for whatever reason, I would always get really scared that he was going to die. And he'd be like, I'll be here as long as you need me. Like, that was something he always said. So I think I got it into my head at a very young age that I could never be truly successful. I've always been successful, but I could never be truly successful completely on my own, because if I did do that on my own, then I wouldn't need him anymore. And if I didn't need him anymore, then he would die. So that showed up in a lot of like a little bit of failure to launch for me too. Like, I was sitting on so much of my potential for a really long time. So him dying really gave me a lot of, the safety net was out and I was just falling. And I was the only one who could bring it back, because it's like, I can't go to my mom. There's like really no one else I can go to. So anything I want has to come from me now, which is helpful in a way, because look how much we've accomplished. And I think the weirdest part is knowing that, because I'm such a go-getter. I'm such an all or nothing person. Like, I don't do anything halfway. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
I know.
And I know. And that's a really good quality I have. But there's always this knowing that if somebody came to me and was like,
going to ask
hey,
you for this question.
Like, hey, if you could trade it all right now, you could spend the day with your dad again. If you give back your business, if you give back your marriage, if you give back the move, if you give back your house, if you give back everything that's happened since the moment he died,
Mm-hmm.
You could spend a day with your dad. A heartbeat.
Yeah.
Like, before they even got that out,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, yes. And so I think knowing that, like, it's cheating, right? Because it's like,
It's
that
never
won't
going to
happen.
happen. Yeah.
But I have to be honest with myself. If it did, yeah, to know that, like, I'm so grateful and I'm so convicted in everything I do, and in a heartbeat, I'd give it up to spend one more day with him. That's a
'Cause
weird
I
that's a
mean,
weird feeling.
yeah, but it's the feeling of like the most deepest unconditional love you can experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the
You,
deepest pain that you just never
yeah.
that you can't do anything about it.
No, it stays a little hole.
Not little. I mean, it's
Oh,
a big hole.
hole in your heart. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
So
it's
that,
the deepest pain that you didn't ask for, that you can't fix.
mm-hmm,
And I am a fixer.
mm-hmm.
I'm a solutions-oriented person, and I think if you are too, if you're listening to this and you are too, like, that to me is one of the hardest things about moving with grief is, like, I mean, you know this, you're married to me. If there's a problem, I'm like, fucking solutions.
Same. I mean, we're both
Like,
solvers.
I solve shit.
Yeah.
Like,
And
oh, I need to get this done. Like, I need to figure out how to make $1,000 by the end of the week. No problem. I can do that. Like, I'll figure it out. Oh, somebody needs help. I'll figure out a way to help them. Oh, like, my son needs something and I'm not in the country. I will figure out a way to get it to him.
okay,
So to know that grief is that one thing, like, I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Like, he is, okay, so I do all this work.
mm-hmm.
I do the breath work and I do the somatic work and I heal my wounds and I close that chapter energetically. Okay, he's still dead.
You wake up the next day and
He's still dead.
He's still dead. Yeah.
And he's going to still be dead forever. So it's like, it almost feels like the whole, like, healing your grief is bullshit, because it's like there is it doesn't heal. It's literally a wound that doesn't heal. You just evolve and you actually just get better you expand your capacity to handle hard shit.
So I think you read it when I wrote it out, but there was like a metaphor I used with armor.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, grief is like a layer of armor that you're given.
Mm-hmm.
So like medieval knights, they wear that heavy metal armor on themselves. And to protect themselves, they have to have it on. It's not something you can take off and just go into war because you're going to die. So grief is not something you can just be like, oh no, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm going to put it over there.
I mean, you can.
And you can, exactly. And then you're going to go into life and you're going to get.
for a year.
Yeah, you're going to get, but you're going to get leveled and you're not going
to. But I honestly
live.
think that sometimes you might need to.
Maybe.
I think I needed to. I think I needed to go through that because if I wouldn't have done that, then I wouldn't have had the moment, like the realizations, and I wouldn't have been able to feel it as deeply as I felt it a year later. So I do think that sometimes you need to go into battle without war to see, or into battle without the armor to see, like, actually how much you need the armor.
Yes,
yeah,
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Like everyone's journey is different.
Totally.
Like some people will put the armor on. So you have this armor on now, you're going into war and you're trying to like run into battle and you're like, I can't run because this is like metal armor and it's uncomfortable and it's bulky and it's slowing me down. Well, the only way to continue living and to survive is to actually move better with the armor. So it's to get yourself stronger. So you got to work out, you got to do your breath work, you got to do all the things with your armor now on you so that you can move easier as you go through life with that armor on. And that armor acts as it helps protect you. I mean, those of us that have been through really, really impactful grief, and I say impactful because there's no like levels, like, oh, I lost this person, so my grief is more. I lost this person because my grief is more. Like, that's another misconception. Like, no one's grief is harder or better than anyone else's. Grief is the great neutralizer and it humbles all of us, and everyone is at the same level of grieving because your experience is different. But back to the armor, it's like, I want to be strong in battle so that I can survive, and I want to be strong in this war. So I've got to figure out how I personally move with this armor on.
Yeah.
And I think that is something you've done well. And as you said, they can't just like heal and fix it. But what are some of the ways that you've been able to like move with it in I would say more peaceful? Like today you said you came in, you're very peaceful, which is maybe a wild answer to how are you feeling when you come in, when you know you're coming in to have a conversation about, you know, the hardest, deepest, darkest stuff, having a raw, real conversation. So like, how have you been able to find peace? How have you been able to move with your armor? And like, what are some of the tools that you've used to just move stronger? Because again, we're not solving it. You're not healed. You're not like, I like to say healing people help heal people. So this is something you're in your healing journey. You're healing, and it's a never ending journey. So what are some of the tactics you've utilized? What are some of the...
I mean, it's definitely like, I utilize my work a lot, like the way that I help others, because I think it's like literally a month after my dad died, we lost my dog Maggie, who was like 13.
We should even go
like
before that.
We lost Breezy's grandpa.
My grandpa.
Literally a month later, we lost my dad, and then a month after that, we lost Maggie. So it was just like it came in threes. But I think it's made me simultaneously like colder, but also more warmer. Like I think grief has made me a really good coach, because like I can't be shocked now, right? Like nothing shocks me. And maybe that's because of like my horse, like my birth chart. Like I have a lot of Scorpio, like that could be that, but like truly nothing shocks me anymore. So I'll have clients that will come and tell me things that are super deep for them and are hard, and
you can hold space for it.
I hold space for it really well, because it doesn't shock me, and it doesn't trigger me, and it doesn't make me feel some type of way. So I think tools that I've utilized to get to that place are
well, you mentioned breath work a little while ago.
Yeah, I do breath work. I do breath work. I'm trying to think of like I think any somatic healing helps. Like I love dancing.
Your House 5 experience is very...
I love singing. Like I'm not great at it, but when I can just sing, like in my car on the way here, like I like belt songs at the top of my lungs, going to concerts, like anything that can like raise my frequency. I don't drink at all. I do no drugs either. Like no mind altering, frequency altering substances is a tool that I've utilized that's been really helpful for me, because
that's actually a really good point, because I was the opposite when we met.
Yeah.
And I did use substances to heal a lot of my grief, or to just bypass my grief.
Yeah.
Alcohol was my biggest one. I was never into drugs at all, but alcohol was a big one for me. And I did not realize it until I saw, like, you really led me through that.
Yeah. Well, you have to I wanted to face it.
Yeah,
you know, when I realized after a year of not facing it, and it's not like I say that. I've met people that truly have not accessed their grief. Like I definitely access my grief. Like I would literally go to SoulCycle and like cry on the podium. Like I was very
talked about
raw.
it daily.
I talked about it all the time. I still do. And I think that's actually a tool too, is like I talk about it, and I don't bottle it up. And I also when I talk about it, I don't, you know how some people, when they talk about what they've been through, they like water it down so they don't make somebody uncomfortable.
You do not have watering down skin.
No, I don't do that.
That's not a thing.
But that's a tool.
Yeah, that is.
So if we're talking tools, that's a tool, because it does me no good. And honestly, it does no one else any good if I'm not sharing exactly how it feels.
Yeah.
And that's going to make some people uncomfortable that haven't experienced that. And people that are natural fixers, or, you know, their ego, their trauma response is like, oh, somebody's uncomfortable, I need to absorb that and like fix it. It actually helps them too. So I think, and my dad was funny. Like he was a really funny guy, and had great jokes. And so I laugh a lot. That's a tool. Like I make jokes about him all the time.
And you retell his jokes.
I tell his jokes. I keep his legacy very much alive.
So for me,
like I was him for Halloween, and some people were like, "That's really morbid," and I'm like, I don't think so. I think it's awesome.
For me, growing up, my family experienced a lot of grief. How I got here to this whole project.
You guys didn't really talk about it.
We didn't talk about it a lot, and I remember the hardest lost a few, like my great grandma, a few great aunts and uncles and stuff. But when I lost my grandma, that was a leveler for me when I lost my grandma. And I remember the first thing I wanted to do was just like, I was cooking people food and like cleaning up her house because I could not speak about it. And on the like flip of seeing now how we raise Owen, it's been really healing for me because, so I think one of the other tools to go along with tools is for Owen's, what was it, his 5th birthday that we got him Papa Bear? So you had the really beautiful idea, and if anyone's listening, they have kids who are experiencing grief. Danielle did this for our son Owen. I did it for my niece Tess. You go to Build-A-Bear, buy a bear. They have voice boxes that you put in their hands, and she has really amazing videos of her dad like singing happy birthday, saying I love you, all these things, but you put the voice recording in the hands and then dress him. Like when we first got Papa Bear, he had on like a Hawaiian shirt, just like your dad, cargo shorts. And glasses. And then same thing with, I made my grandpa into a bear for my niece Tess, and same glasses, white tee, pocket tee, cargo shorts. But that's been something that's like insanely helpful tool for Owen and Tess both. But I think one thing that you showed me daily at our house is like we daily talk about Papa. Owen's
every day.
grandpa. Every day there's
as
something.
As if he's still there.
As if he's still there, as if we joke. And Owen will say sometimes like, that makes me really sad. I really miss Papa. And he's able to have awareness. He's able to communicate how he's feeling. And then other times it's just, we're just laughing about silly jokes. Like my favorite one is,
who would really love this joke? Like Papa. Yeah.
Yeah. And his legacy is living every single day. And that's something that I've been able to learn from you. And it's like healing something from as I was growing up. And again, it was nothing that my family did wrong. It was just everyone was doing the best they could with the resources they had.
Yeah.
And it's like as we continue to go through these grief journeys, we just learn more and more about what heals and what can help not everyone, but it heals and helps some people.
We just like, I just think it's like another tool is just demystifying grief. Grief is not a bad thing. And we've been taught that it's this sad,
dark,
it's bad, it's dark,
scary.
It's scary. And like, I don't think it is. How lucky are we to have had the kind of love that warrants grief?
Yep.
Like
have that deep,
to have that deep of a connection with someone that like I can talk about him and like immediately cry, and like I can just like smell him all over again, like that's so beautiful. And like I'll be damned if we're not going to keep talking about him, and so that's been a huge tool for us.
What about movement in a literal sense? Because that's been, as you know, a huge go-to for me.
I think for me, it's like my dad couldn't move a lot. And so me committing to being the healthiest version of myself so that I don't die at 33 or when Owen turns 33 is a really big motivator for me.
Yeah. I feel that one.
Like I do not want to end up like my dad. And obviously like my dad, a lot of what my dad went through was out of his hands because he was a diabetic,
and there were still some controllables.
But there were some controllables that he just refused to take part in. And so, which was his choice. Like that's not, I can be mad about that. I can be frustrated with him that he didn't try harder. But like he wasn't meant to, obviously. Like he did what he did what he came here to do. And that is something, as I think a lot of people get mixed up on, like I think people make other people's death a very selfish experience. And like my dad dying actually had nothing to do with me.
Nothing to do, yeah.
It had what was left behind has to do with me. But him living his life the way he did and leaving Earthside the way he did was not my choice. And it was not mine to decide. It was not for anyone but him to dictate. And I do feel like I think that brings me a little bit of peace. Like my dad did decide. Like he fought really hard for a really long time, and there were many times he probably should have died and didn't because his, again, triple Gemini, so his mind was strong. And when he finally kind of said, "I think I'm done," you know, he made that choice.
Mm-hmm.
He chose to go into hospice. And my stepmom and I both, we still talk about this. Like when we watched him get into that bed,
We knew.
he was never getting out of that bed again. Like we knew. He was so peaceful and he was so comfortable, and he hadn't been comfortable in months.
Mm-hmm.
So once he finally said, I'm done
Mm-hmm.
fighting. What do you say to that? You can't say anything to that. So the only thing I can do now is be the healthiest version of myself and keep my mind clear. You know, I don't believe in numbing. Now, I don't believe in numbing for myself. I do think you might, depending on what you went through and the tools that you have, you know, because it's like the grief wave comes whether you like it or not. And I think some people I've learned, I didn't used to feel this way, but I do now, especially with helping as many people as I have through their own grief. Sometimes you need to learn skills before you can actually effectively process your grief. I had all those skills. Like I had all those tools. I just chose not to use them in my first year. Some people truly don't have the tools because they were never taught the tools or they never learned the tools. So I actually think sometimes like numbing, you know, you don't want to, of course you don't want to like go too hard. But, you know, I've heard stories of people that did go down the like drug route or drinking or even just like antidepressants for a few years. And while they were doing that, while they moved with grief in that way, they also were learning breath work and they were also expanding their toolbox
Mm-hmm.
so that then they had the capacity. Because I think if you don't have the capacity to handle it, it can take you out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's again part of why we're here, right? Like that's literally my mission with Project Grēf is to just share, because your experience, your tools are completely different than my experiences, my tools, than everyone else who's going to be on here. Because
like I think if you have gone down the addiction route, or if you know you have gone down an antidepressant route, you know, you're going to have the world will tell you like you're a bad person because you did that, but I don't believe that.
No.
I hope that you don't stay down that path for long, and everything you go through it's meant you're meant to experience that.
There's a purpose for it.
There's a purpose for it. You know, like there were a lot of people in that first year that just assumed I was fine because I was the person I was.
Well, you kept moving.
I kept moving.
Yes.
And to a lot of people, they would say that was doing grief right.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was moving and I was active and I never drank.
You weren't just on the couch like...
Yeah, I never drank.
Yeah.
Not once. I did not have one drink. Because I stopped drinking before that. I stopped drinking the year before. And so I never had one drink. I've never done drugs. So that was not a thing. But like I didn't do anything to alter my state. I just kept moving, and I actually worked out harder, and I actually dieted more. But that honestly, that led to what that was actually doing for me was just bypassing the real pain that I was feeling. And it was just more of the same. I never had let myself fully fall apart. And that it just perpetuated that. So when I finally did, that really is what changed everything in my life, was burning my business down, quitting SoulCycle, you know, not being so strict vegan, allowing myself to be more intuitive and like soften is what gave me, it was almost like the visual I get is like my heart was kind of like wrapped in like ice. And like the ice was necessary because like otherwise it would have just exploded. But like when we finally were able to like chip away that ice and like crack it open, you know, everything had to fall apart with it. And I think that's a misconception with grief too, is that it can be compartmentalized, and I don't think it can. I think when you finally are ready to face it and like really, really move with it, it's like ink on paper. It bleeds into every aspect of your life. So now like grief is intertwined with my happiest moments.
Mhm.
Grief is intertwined with my business.
Mhm.
Grief is intertwined with my marriage, the way I raise my son, the way that I am with my son's dad, the way that I am with my friends, how I'm able to coach clients and hold capacity and both be non-reactive and extremely empathetic at the exact same moment.
Mhm.
All of that is because I finally allowed myself to let grief like spill out of its like perfectly preserved container that I was trying to keep it in.
Well, and I think you, at the same time, you didn't just pretend like it was the loss of your dad that was the grief in that cup.
Yeah.
Like the ink that spills was like the loss of your dad,
Maggie.
the loss of Maggie.
The loss
The
of
lo-
like feeling like I had something to fall on.
Yeah, the loss of feeling you had something, the loss of, Soul Cycle, like grieving a 10-year career.
Yeah.
Like there was lost friendships during that time.
Yeah.
We
I've lost
were
a lot
getting-
of friends during the last 4.5 years.
We were getting ready to
weird.
move out of state. So it was like the loss of our like
Well, we didn't
home.
even decide to move out of state until after my dad died.
Right after. But it was in the grief journey. But I think one thing that you have done, it's like admitting to yourself or whatever, like recognizing and just being present to the fact that grief is not just your dad died and I'm going through that. It's like so many different
Well, it's like
versions
that was the
of
chicken.
grief. That was
Or
the
like what was the
yeah,
chicken and what was the egg?
Yeah. But it's like as like all of those experiences with big loss, right? Impactful loss that shook your sense of normalcy. All of those are spilling out in different directions, and how you actually acknowledge when those show up in your relationship, when those show up in your parenting, when those show up in your, but it's not like just the one thing. It's how all of those are intertwined as well. And
well, because grief is trauma, and trauma is defined as anything that takes you out of your authenticity. Like that's literally the definition of trauma. Anything that ever took you out of your authenticity. So grief,
it alters your sense of normalcy. That's what I say. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes you out of your authenticity, but it also can be the thing that brings you back to it. You know, like everyone says grief is trauma, and I don't know if I agree with that anymore. I think trauma is anything that takes you out of your authenticity, but truly meeting your grief is actually what brings you back to your authenticity. So I don't think I agree that like grief is trauma. I think unprocessed grief is trauma. I think grief that you're unwilling or unwilling. I don't think you're ever unable. I don't think we're ever unwilling to face is trauma that causes trauma. But I think if you're actually willing to face your grief and meet it head on and move with it, as you say, I think that's actually what heals your trauma. That's what brings you back to your authenticity.
I would say grief can be a traumatic experience, and especially when it's like very
what
unpredicted.
Caused the grief is the traumatic experience.
Yes.
But grief itself is not trauma.
No.
Unhealed grief causes trauma because it takes you out of your authenticity. So if you really think about it, it's like, yeah, my dad dying, the death of my father was trauma. Me not facing it for a year caused trauma to my nervous system. But when I finally allowed it to spill out of the cup that I was like holding so tight, trying to get it to stay in, and I finally just let it go where it needed to go, that's actually what brought me back to my authenticity. It healed. Like facing your grief heals your trauma. I believe that. Yeah, I really believe that. And I know that's like very unpopular opinion, but here I am.
But that's why I wanted to have a conversation with you, because you do have a very unique perspective on grief and how it shows up. Like I know you've even said like losing your dad was one of the best and worst things that's ever happened to you. And that is something that is also hard for people to actually wrap their brain around.
Oh, yeah.
And
I mean, losing my dad was one of the best things that could have happened to me on a soul level, because if I learned everything I was meant to learn from him, well, then at a certain point, the student becomes the teacher. So if I was done being the student, well, now I get to take that and I get to spread those lessons, and look at how much we've accomplished since then and will continue to accomplish. some of those things could have never happened had he not died. So it was one of, but that's kind of going back to what we were saying in the beginning, like the most fucked up part of that is like knowing that, and also knowing without a shadow of doubt that if I had the option to trade it all for one day with him, I would.
Yeah.
I would probably do it for 5 minutes with him, if I'm being honest. I would probably do it for a hug.
And but that's also, I think, bringing you back to your authenticity, right? Because
It's very authentic. That transcends human.
Yeah.
That transcends humanity. That takes you back to a soul level of like our souls are always connected, and and we're still here having a human experience. Yeah. And my human, like I consciously and cerebrally understand, obviously, like losing my dad and losing Maggie and like watching you lose your grandpa, like that, and watching our son process losing all those people has made me less afraid of death.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not afraid of death anymore because I understand that it is a spiritual experience, that energy doesn't die. I saw my dad's soul leave his body. Like I watched his soul levitate out of his body. And what was really crazy is like, as soon as that happened, I had zero emotional attachment to the body at all, which is crazy.
Well, this could be an episode, I think, for another time where we talk about our feelings of the energy, and the energy that now exists with your dad and with
Dan
Maggie.
Loves to come back and hang all the time.
Yeah. I mean, we feel my grandma and my grandpa and my other grandma and my other grandpa all the time. And the veil between human experience and the
spiritual realm is very thin.
Yes.
And there's been studies now. There's like scientific studies coming out about this, which is so cool. And like, but it's literally says like, death may not actually be the end. It might just be a change in consciousness, which like, that's what I teach.
To the next level.
That's literally what I teach. Is that like everything is different parallel consciousnesses, right? Like it's parallel timelines. So like my dad very much exists in another timeline, and we've existed in many timelines together. And it's like him ending this timeline is not the end. It's just a new state of consciousness. So if that's true, then the veil between us is actually so thin and reachable. Like I can connect with my dad spiritually whenever I want.
Through meditation, breath work. Yeah.
He comes to my dreams. Yeah. If I ask, I do a lot of tarot and oracle, and like I always ask my dad for he's an angel now. So I always ask him for his advice, and it always comes through in a card. Always. So yeah, I mean it's a very small, thin veil. But that is something that changed through losing him. Because I was always really afraid of death.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not afraid of death anymore.
Yeah. Same. I remember every time my mom like would call me.
Yeah.
For the first like year after, I'm like, who died? Yeah. Like literally like that panic. Yeah. And for me, that's been something I've healed as well, is like not the like fear that something's always wrong.
Yeah.
It's just.
Well, and even that, like, I think I used to get really weird about this because people would be like, oh, so-and-so died. And everybody around me is like crying and upset. And I'm like, yeah. Like, I don't react to things like that anymore. Like, I don't feel, I guess that is something that I'm still grappling with is like, am I cold? Am I actually just shut off to human emotion? Or am I just so aware that death is not the end, that like, that's not a scary thing? Like, I'm still working that out in my own head. Like, sometimes I'm like, should I have more emotion about this? Like, I'm obviously, I understand that I'm a spiritual being. We're all spiritual beings, but I also chose here to have a human experience. So in that, theoretically, I should feel grief with people. And like now somebody will be like, oh, my so-and-so died. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Well, that happened.
You also have learned through your grief how to not take on other people's energy. So I think that's also a tool that you have. Like, I'm an empath, and I still am working on like without trying, take on other people's energy. So I think that's just something that you
if you take on people's energy without trying, then where you're trying needs to be focused is not taking on people's energy.
Yeah.
because you're always going to absorb it without trying. So you actually have to try to not do it. But yeah, I mean, that is something I learned. Like I really had to, that was a tool I learned, is kind of putting my shields up energetically.
Mm-hmm.
So I can, in my motto now is like, I feel you, but I won't feel for you.
Because you're so focused on being authentic and feeling your own feelings.
Yeah, my
It's not a
feelings are
bad thing.
enough.
Yeah.
And the more you absorb other people's feelings, so if you have somebody that's going through grief, like don't absorb their grief for them,
Because then
they don't.
Yeah.
Then you're giving them permission to bypass it.
But then you're also feeling their feelings and not your own.
Well, right.
I learned
so
that
now we're all bypassing.
Yeah, I learned that when it was my grandpa died, who I was very close to. He was
Yeah.
huge role in my life. And your dad died 32 days or something like that later.
Yeah.
And I started to feel your feelings for you because your feelings were so strong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think unintentionally you were trying to offboard your feelings. And you were like, whether it was intentional or unintentional, you just had your feelings that were sitting there. And I was like, well, I'll take these for you so you don't have to feel them as strong.
Mm-hmm.
But then I wasn't grieving my grandpa because then I was feeling your grief for your dad.
Yeah.
And it was this whole
I don't think anybody, I don't think we as humans have the ability to purposely
give away
our feelings. It's like, here are all these feelings. I'm not feeling them right now.
They're just going to sit here on the table.
And you were like,
I was like, I'll take them. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. I think we have some good topics for next time. We have a conversation about this, but is there anything else before we end this first episode together? Anything else you want to share about your journey with moving with grief?
I'm just really proud of you.
Thanks.
I think that you have been sitting on this idea for long enough. Frankly, I'm tired of hearing about it, so I'm glad that you're finally putting it out into the world.
Me too.
And I think that, you're going to have a lot of really cool conversations with people that might feel so different than I do,
Mm-hmm.
And that's really cool because I know I tell my grief story a lot. Like it's part of my brand at this point, that's part of what I teach. It's part of what I help my clients with. And I know that the way that I move with grief triggers some people because I've heard it.
Mm-hmm.
Because people have told me that I don't take it seriously. And then other people are like, oh my gosh, I love this. Like, me telling the story of how my stepmom has put my dad's ashes in the back of his car. And I'm laughing about that. And Owen and I are laughing about that. I got comments being like, this is you're not, this is a little bit morbid, or I don't know how to feel about this story. And I think people assume that I am just not processing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because how could I be making a joke about it? But what they don't realize is the extent to which I not only have processed it, but move with it and process it every single day now.
Mm-hmm.
Once I let that cat out of the bag, that cat will never go back in the bag. And I know that triggers people. So knowing that, I think you doing this and giving so many different platforms for people that feel very differently, a space to share it, is just going to help a lot of people. Because, I think if you're only listening to one version of grief, it's really easy to get it into your head that you're not doing it right. And I don't believe in that. I don't believe that anybody's doing grief wrong. I think you could be doing grief misaligned for you, but you're the only one that can really figure that out. And so you doing this and giving people the space and the opportunity and the gift of being able to hear it through a lot of different lenses is really cool.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I do want to just share as many different types of people's journeys with it as possible, because especially for me, it was the more I heard about other people grieving and their journeys, the more I just was able to take certain tools from people. Like I told you, the few tools I've taken from you, taken from other people in my life, but it's not something that we're taught as children unless you experience grief very, very early on.
Like Owen.
Like Owen. Yep.
He's one of the only kids I know that really like has been able to intellectualize death and grief and like really understand it.
He really does have a very unique.
He really understands it.
Mm-hmm. But, as kids, it's not something we're taught in school. It's not something we're taught at home.
No.
We're not taught about grieving, and we're not given a tool belt to begin with. So it's something that like the second it happens and it levels you, it's like, oh, okay, shit. Now in real time, you need to try
how fast you can get over it.
Yeah. And how fast you can like talk about it, find all these tools, go to therapy, and then, okay, we're done and we're moving on. And it's just could not be farther from the truth. So,
well, and it's like an image I just got, and like I don't know if this will help if you're listening to this, and if you're in like if it's fresh for you, whatever grief you're going through, if it's a more fresh feeling, like somebody just died or something, there's this for the first like 3 weeks, everyone's in it with you.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting checked up on constantly.
Yeah.
Every day.
Text, calls.
Almost too much.
People bring you food.
Yeah, almost too much.
Flowers.
Yeah, almost too much.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, almost too much. But it's like people are in it with you. And there's going to come a moment, and it kind of all happens at once, where people just will stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where people get really upset, and then they kind of go off a deep end because they just feel like nobody cares. Because when you're in it, what it feels like is that movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, maybe it was Bradley Cooper, I don't know, where Limitless, I think, where like he is moving in hyperspeed, but everyone else, or he's moving in slow motion and everyone else around him is moving really, really fast. And that is what it felt like after the fact. And there's nothing that can prepare you for that loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the most alchemizing moments because you can't expect other people to stay in it they don't know. They're not in it. That's just an invitation for you to actually face it.
Yeah.
I didn't for a year. I stayed in that slow motion, quick motion for a year. I don't think that everybody should do that.
Well, I remember the exact moment that I felt that feeling after losing my grandma. Like 5 days later, I had to go to a volleyball tournament because I was coaching volleyball at the time. And I remember getting to the hotel and I was just like shaking, but I couldn't even cry. But it was like so fresh, but I didn't want to miss this tournament. And I was there and I remember just sitting at the hotel and one of the moms was like, "Hey, how are you?" And I just like tears just welled up in my eyes. And she's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I'll be right back." And I remember going into like my hotel room or the bathroom or something. And I called my mom and I was like, "I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this." Like everyone is just like, "Oh, normal, just hanging out." And I'm like, grandma just died. Like literally the most influential person in my life. Like my absolute like rock. Like she was my person. And I was like, like no one gets it. And I like could not be there. And it was the most uncomfortable, but like, it felt like I was like naked, but everyone was acting like I had clothes on. Like, I don't even know the feeling. Like, it's just like, it was such a
the world keeps moving.
Yeah. And they just like, everyone was in. And so in that moment, I made a decision to like shut off those feelings. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to be present and be here. And that's what my grandma would want. Like that was always a saying. And so it was like, then I just kept moving. And so I bypassed it for I don't even know how long. But I remember that moment of the feeling of being just like dead stop. And everyone's like 100 miles an hour around you.
Well, we live in a world that says like, turn your pain into profit, or turn your pain into purpose, or turn like whatever the fuck they say. It's so stupid. It's true. Like you are turning your pain into a purpose with this project, but it's not something you need to rush to. And I remember when I went back to SoulCycle, like a week, 2 weeks later, like what the fuck? Well, I had no business being on a podium 2 weeks after that happened. And in my brain, I was like, oh, this will be good. I can share with people.
Yeah.
I will impact people.
When you haven't even like begun to feel it.
I haven't even felt it yet. So I'm sitting there like teaching this class and everyone's like, that was the best class you've ever taught. And it's just perpetuating this like addiction to praise that I had at the time. And my dad was no longer there to praise me. So now I had all my writers to praise me.
Yeah, feeding off that. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to there's no rush. There's the good news with grief is there's no rush because you're going to be in it for the rest of your life. So you just take your sweet time because it's literally with you from now until the day you die. So yeah, I if you're in that like slow motion, quick motion thing, just don't shut those feelings off. Like that feeling you have, that loneliness you feel, that like nobody understands what I'm going through feeling is actually the most important feeling I think you feel. It's the most powerful feeling you'll feel. And the way you move with that feeling is going to determine a lot about how it's going to go next.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Until next time.
Until next time.